The evening sun dipped low over Kibera Heights, turning the narrow alleys and rusted rooftops into rivers of gold. A faint smell of roasted maize drifted through the air, mixing with the laughter of children chasing a punctured football across the street. From afar, everything looked ordinary, peaceful even. The kind of peace that hides stories too heavy to be seen in daylight. Outside a tiny roadside cafe called Kisa's Corner, the owner, Ama Kisa, was closing up for the night. She wiped the last table, humming a soft Swahili lullaby her mother once sang when the world still felt kind. As she turned to lock the door, a sound slipped through the silence, so fragile, she almost mistook it for the wind. It was a sob. Ama froze. The sound came again, this time sharper, quivering, filled with something that made her throat tighten. She stepped out, her eyes scanning the dim street. And there, just beside the old wooden bench near the cafe sign, sat a little girl, maybe 10 years old, her bare feet coated in dust. A torn school uniform clung to her small frame, and her eyes, deep, brown, and frightened, glistened in the fading light. In her hands she clutched a broken doll, its head dangling by a single thread. Ama's heart sank. She crouched down gently. "Sweetheart, are you lost?" The girl shook her head, silent at first. Then her lips parted, and what came out shattered the calm evening into 1,000 sharp pieces. "He hurt my grandma." Ama blinked, stunned. "Who did, my dear?" The girl's name was Zama. Her voice trembled as she spoke, the words tumbling between hiccups. "Our landlord, he pushed her. She fell, she's bleeding." Without hesitation, Ama grabbed her phone and rushed toward the narrow lane Zama pointed to. Her heart raced as she entered the dim alley, where flickering bulbs cast ghostly shadows on cracked walls. At the far end, she saw a frail elderly woman sitting on the ground, her floral dress smeared with dust, one hand pressed to her arm where blood oozed through torn skin. "Help her," Zama whispered. Ama knelt beside the woman, whose wrinkled face trembled in pain. The old woman's voice was soft but clear, touched with a distinct Korean accent. "He wanted money, said we owe more." Before Ama could respond, the sharp slam of a metal gate echoed from inside the compound. A heavy man stepped out, his shirt unbuttoned, his eyes glazed with arrogance. Mugo, the landlord. His breath reeked of alcohol, and his fists were still clenched from rage. "You again, Kisa," he sneered. "This doesn't concern you. These two haven't paid rent in months." Ama rose slowly, her pulse quickening. "She's bleeding, Mugo." "You hurt an old woman. That's not rent, it's cruelty." He laughed, stepping closer, his shadow falling over both women. "Mind your business before you end up like her." But before his voice could spill another threat, something unexpected sliced through the night. The sound of engines. Low at first, then louder, deeper, like a storm rolling closer. Headlights flared from the far end of the road, bouncing off the cracked walls. 6 motorcycles turned into the alley, their chrome glinting under the amber sky. Everyone in Kibera Heights knew that sound. The Peace Riders. They were a group of local bikers, half feared, half respected. Some said they were ex-gang members who had found faith. Others whispered that they only rode for justice when no one else would. The bikes stopped in unison, engines purring like lions ready to defend their cubs. The lead rider dismounted first. He was tall, dark-skinned, with braids tucked under a worn leather helmet. A scar traced the side of his jaw, a mark of the life he'd left behind. His vest bore the name Kwame stitched in bold white letters. He scanned the scene, the trembling girl, the bleeding grandmother, the angry landlord, and something in his expression changed. A flash of memory, perhaps. A wound long buried. He walked forward slowly, the weight of his boots echoing in the alley. "Evening," he said, voice calm yet heavy with command. "Is there a problem here?" Mugo smirked. "This is private. Stay out of it." Kwame tilted his head slightly, his eyes darkening. "Private?" He glanced down at Zama, whose small fingers still gripped her doll like a lifeline. "That child cried in public. That makes it everyone's business." Behind him, the other riders stood still, silent as stone. The hum of their engines filled the air, blending with the faint sounds of the city beyond. Neighbors peeked through their windows, whispering.
No one dared step in. Amma could feel the air thickening with tension.
Yet amidst that heaviness, there was something else, a strange sense of safety, like the storm had brought protection, not destruction.
Mugo tried to laugh it off. You think you can scare me with your bikes and your leather jackets? Kwame didn't blink.
He took another step, his voice low.
No. But maybe your conscience can. He pointed to Miran, the elderly woman, who was now trying to stand despite her pain. Look at her. She's old enough to be your mother. And you beat her for rent?
For a second, something flickered in Mugo's eyes, a sliver of guilt, but it vanished as quickly as it came.
You don't know what it's like running property here, he muttered. People take advantage. Stop. Kwame's tone cut through the excuses. The only people taking advantage tonight are you. The silence stretched. Even the night seemed to hold its breath.
Then, with deliberate calm, Kwame stepped aside and motioned to his men.
One brought out a small first aid kit from his saddlebag and handed it to Amma. Another removed his jacket and draped it gently over Miran's shoulders. Their quiet actions spoke louder than any threat. Mugo's bravado began to crack.
His hand trembled slightly as he fumbled for his car keys.
Fine, he muttered, backing away. I'm done here.
He stumbled toward his car, started the engine, and sped off into the night, leaving behind a trail of dust, silence, and shame.
Amma exhaled slowly, her knees weak. She looked at Kwame with disbelief. Who are you people? Kwame gave a faint smile. Just riders. We go where kindness is needed.
Zama, who had been clutching her doll the entire time, stepped forward and tugged at his vest.
Will he come back? She asked. Kwame crouched to meet her gaze. His voice softened. Not tonight. And not ever again while we're around.
Her eyes welled with tears, not from fear this time, but from relief. The last of the sun disappeared behind the skyline, leaving only the hum of engines and the soft murmur of gratitude. For the first time that day, Miran smiled, a fragile smile, but real.
Kwame looked around at the narrow alley, the frightened neighbors peeking through cracks, and whispered almost to himself. Sometimes the world forgets that kindness has muscle too. And with that, he rose, helping Amma lift Miran to her feet. The riders lingered a moment longer, their presence a silent promise that no cruelty would go unanswered here again. The night reclaimed its calm, but this time, it was a peace earned through courage. The night air over Kibera Heights was cooler now, the chaos of the evening settling into murmurs. From somewhere nearby came the faint hiss of a kettle, the smell of raindamp dust mixed with exhaust smoke and roasted corn. The small crowd that had gathered slowly melted away, leaving behind silence, a flickering bulb, and a handful of people bound together by something they hadn't planned, kindness born out of pain. Amma Kisa guided the trembling Miran inside the cafe.
The old woman's steps were careful but steady, she refused to lean too heavily on anyone. Zama followed, her little doll pressed tight to her chest, its one-eyed face catching the dim light like a tiny witness.
Kwame stood in the doorway, helmet tucked under one arm.
The glow from the cafe spilled over his leather vest, tracing the white letters Peace Riders. His men waited outside, engines off now, leaning against their bikes, watching the quiet street with the patience of sentinels. Inside, Amma poured warm tea into chipped cups. The steam curled upward, fogging the glass window for a moment before disappearing.
Here, she said softly, placing a cup before Miran. It'll help with the shaking.
Thank you, Miran whispered, her accent lilting gently through the words. She touched the warm cup, eyes downcast.
Kwame sat opposite her, his presence filling the small space without force.
His gaze wasn't hard anymore, it carried the weight of questions. How long has that man been hurting you? He asked quietly.
Miran hesitated.
Since my husband died. He said he would help, take care of rent, fix things.
But he wanted control instead.
When I said no, he shouted. Tonight, he pushed me. Zama's voice cracked as she added, he broke our radio last week, and Grandma's picture of Grandpa. A silence fell so thick even the clock on the wall seemed to pause between ticks.
Kwame's fingers flexed against the table.
His jaw moved, but he didn't speak right away. Somewhere deep inside, old memories were waking, the sound of shouting, the flash of a hand raised, a small boy hiding behind a chair. He had seen this before. Lived it. Survived it. Amma noticed his faraway stare. You've seen something like this, haven't you? Kwame nodded slowly. When I was her age, he said, glancing toward Zama, my mother worked for a man who thought her silence was permission. It took one night for everything to change. No one spoke. The hum of a distant generator filled the gap. She didn't survive, he continued. And the police never came. That's when I learned that sometimes, kindness needs steel in its spine. Amma's throat tightened. Miran looked at him, really looked, and something softened in her expression. You remind me of someone, she murmured, her eyes tracing the scar along his jaw. When I was young in Busan, I had a son's friend, a boy who was quiet but strong inside. He helped me carry groceries when the monsoon came. His name was also Kwame. He blinked. Busan? She nodded. My husband worked at the shipyard there. We lived near a small Ghanaian community. My son's best friend was from there. For a long second, Kwame couldn't breathe. The scent of sea salt and metal, the distant laughter of a Korean boy and an African friend, ghosts of a childhood resurfaced. He remembered her face now, younger then, the same soft eyes. He had been that boy. Miran, he whispered, the realization crashing over him. You're Mrs. Lee. You were like a second mother to me. The old woman's eyes widened, tears glistening. Little Kwame? The boy who brought my son mangoes from his father's stall? Amma and Zama exchanged astonished looks as the two embraced across the table, fragile arms meeting leather and scars, years collapsing into a single moment of recognition. Zama tilted her head, confused but smiling. You knew my grandma when she was young? Kwame nodded, emotion thick in his throat. She helped raise me. She was kindness when the world had none. Amma stepped back, letting the moment breathe. Outside, the bikers stood in silence, watching through the window, unsure what miracle they were witnessing but feeling its gravity. When Miran finally spoke again, her tone had changed. Then tonight was no accident, she said softly. God sent you back. Kwame's voice was rough. Maybe. Or maybe kindness just circles back when you need it most. He rose then, pacing slowly toward the window, the streetlight painting long shadows behind him. But I can't just walk away. That man, Mugo, he'll find someone else to hurt. This neighborhood protects silence, not safety. Amma frowned. You can't fight everyone. I don't plan to, he replied. But I can show them that fear doesn't own this place anymore. Zama looked up at him, eyes wide. Will you stay till Grandma is safe? He smiled faintly. Longer, if I have to. Later that night, the cafe had gone quiet. The bikers took shifts guarding the lane, their bikes parked like watchful beasts. Inside, Miran slept on a bench, Zama curled beside her, hands still gripping her doll. Kwame sat outside under the awning, the glow from his cigarette tip bright against the dark. Amma joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea. You know, she said, handing him one, people here are scared to stand up. They think kindness means weakness. Kwame exhaled slowly. That's because they've only seen kindness from people who can't fight back. They've never seen what happens when kindness has power. Amma studied him. And you? What are you planning? He looked toward the sleeping alley, the distant shimmer of Nairobi lights. Tomorrow I'll visit the local chief. He knows Mugo's record but pretends not to. That ends now. If he won't act, I will. Revenge? She asked quietly. Kwame shook his head. No. Justice dressed in kindness. I don't want to hurt him. I want to stop him. There was a pause. The crickets sang in the distance. Amma smiled slightly. You sound like a preacher with a leather jacket. He chuckled. Maybe that's what the world needs. Just before dawn, the sound of footsteps echoed down the lane. One of the bikers approached, his breath visible in the early chill.
Kwame, he said. We've been watching the house Mugo runs his business from. There's more illegal tenants, stolen electricity, threats. The man's a parasite. Kwame's expression hardened.
Then we don't wait for permission. He stood, the leather of his jacket whispering as he moved. The first rays of morning light touched his face, revealing both strength and sorrow. Amma watched him walk toward his bike, the others following like a silent army. She called out, Kwame. Whatever you do, don't forget why you're doing it. He turned, helmet under his arm. I won't. This isn't vengeance. It's a promise I made a long time ago that no child should cry the way I once did. With that, he kicked his engine to life. The roar broke the still dawn, scattering pigeons into the pale sky. One by one, the peace riders followed, their shadows stretching across the awakening streets. Inside the cafe, Zama stirred, eyes blinking open. She climbed onto the windowsill just in time to see the last motorcycle turn the corner, sunlight flashing off the chrome like a beacon. Grandma, she whispered, still half asleep. The angels are riding again. Miran smiled through her pain, touching the edge of the window. Yes, my child, she said softly. They ride for kindness. Outside, the roar faded into the horizon, not as noise, but as a vow. The morning after the riders left, Kibera Heights was quieter than usual. The streets that usually buzzed with chatter now felt like they were holding their breath, waiting. Word had spread overnight, the peace riders had come. At Kisa's corner, Amma watched the sun climb the rooftops, painting the rusted tin in streaks of gold. Inside, Miran sipped her tea with trembling hands, Zama sitting close beside her, drawing in a torn notebook. She drew a figure on a bike, a man with kind eyes and a heart on his chest. Is that Kwame? Amma asked with a smile. Zama nodded shyly. He's not just strong, she whispered. He listens. Amma's smile faded slightly. He's doing something dangerous today. Outside, the air trembled faintly, the distant hum of engines returning. By noon, the peace riders rolled back into the neighborhood, their arrival sending ripples through every alley. Curtains fluttered. Doors opened a crack. People watched from behind broken fences, uncertain whether to feel fear or hope. Kwame led the group, his expression calm but resolute. He parked in front of Mugo's large, half-finished building, a monument of greed built on the suffering of others. The other riders followed, surrounding the structure in silence. From inside, a few of Mugo's men emerged, rough-looking men who had helped him collect rent through threats and violence. They laughed when they saw the bikers. Back again, one jeered. Didn't you have your hero moment already? Kwame didn't flinch. He removed his helmet, his gaze steady. We're not here for moments, he said. We're here for change. Before they could react, Amma Kisa appeared, leading a small crowd of neighbors, mothers, children, old men. For once, they weren't hiding. They were standing, shoulder to shoulder. Kwame turned to them. You don't need to fight, he said quietly. Just be seen. That's enough. Mugo himself stepped out, his face pale but twisted with anger. This is trespassing, he barked. You think you can take my property? Kwame faced him calmly. Your property? These people's pain isn't property. Their homes aren't your empire. Mugo sneered. And who made you the law? Kwame took a step forward. No one. But when the law sleeps, decency wakes up. Behind him, one of the riders, a tall man named Malik, began unpacking files from a folder. We went through your records, Malik said loudly. Fake rent increases, illegal evictions, unpaid city taxes. We've sent everything to the chief's office and to the media. Mugo's face changed. The confidence cracked. You can't prove. Oh, we already did, Amma interrupted. You hurt people. You threatened women. You built your wealth on fear. The crowd murmured, their whispers growing stronger, voices no longer afraid. A young man stepped forward. He took my father's tools last month. An old woman added, "He locked my door for 2 weeks." One by one, voices rose, not in rage, but in truth.
Kwame didn't shout.
He simply stood there, a steady presence in the noise. "You built this on silence," he said softly.
Now that silence is gone.
Mugo tried to push through the crowd, but the riders formed a wall of leather and quiet power.
He looked around, no one moved for him. The people he had once controlled now watched him with new eyes. The sound of sirens pierced the air.
2 police trucks rolled in, led by the local chief, a stern-faced man who had ignored complaints for years. He stepped out, surprised by the crowd and by the cameras that had arrived behind them, flashing, recording.
Kwame turned toward him. "We've brought you your evidence," he said.
"You can ignore it and protect him, or you can do your job and protect them."
The chief hesitated.
Then he saw the media lenses pointed his way.
The choice was clear.
"Mugo," he said sharply, "you're under arrest." The landlord's protest was drowned out by the voices of the neighborhood clapping, crying, some even laughing in disbelief.
The officers led him away, his arrogance dissolving into silence.
For the first time in years, Kibera Heights breathed freely. As the crowd dispersed, Kwame walked back to the cafe, his men following quietly. He looked weary but lighter, as though a lifetime of weight had shifted off his shoulders.
Zama met him at the door, eyes bright. "You did it." He shook his head. "We did it. Kindness is never one person's job."
Inside, Miran was standing near the counter, a small bandage on her arm, her eyes glistening with tears. "I saw it all on the television," she said softly. "You faced him without hate."
Kwame smiled faintly. "Hate is easy. It ends the story. Kindness, that's harder. It writes a new one." Zama ran to him and hugged his leg tightly.
"You saved us," she said. He knelt down, resting a hand on her shoulder.
"No, little one.
You saved yourself when you ran for help. You reminded the world that courage can come from the smallest voices." She giggled and handed him her drawing, the biker with the heart on his chest.
"This is for you." Kwame took it gently, eyes soft. "I'll keep it. So I don't forget what kindness looks like."
That night, the cafe stayed open later than usual. The peace riders sat around wooden tables, laughter mingling with the aroma of tea and roasted maize. Miran hummed a Korean lullaby, the same one she used to sing decades ago in Busan, and Zama danced clumsily beside her. Amma watched them all, her eyes misty. "You know, people will talk about this day," she said.
"How a gang of bikers saved a neighborhood."
Kwame chuckled.
"Let them talk. As long as they remember why we came."
Malik raised his cup. "To kindness, the kind that fights back." They all lifted their cups, the clink echoing through the small cafe like a quiet anthem. Weeks passed. The police investigation grew, uncovering a web of corruption that stretched beyond Mugo.
The peace riders became local legends, but they never sought fame.
They returned to the road, helping wherever cruelty whispered too loudly. One morning, Amma found a letter on her cafe counter, tucked under a cup.
"For Kisa's Corner."
Where kindness found its voice again.
Kwame. Inside the envelope was Zama's drawing, now laminated, and a small note.
"Keep this where children can see it, so they remember that even leather and steel can carry a gentle heart."
Amma placed it on the wall, right above the counter.
And every evening, when the sun dipped low over Kibera Heights, it caught the light, a reminder that sometimes angels don't have wings.
They ride on 2 wheels.
They wear scars instead of halos.
And when kindness calls, they always return.